Let's look at an example of a case control study. Now, this deals with the risks of smoking during pregnancy. And this is the Centers for Disease Control trying to point out to pregnant women that they should be concerned about smoking during pregnancy. And so they list effects on the mother, they list effects on the babies, and none of this stuff looks very good for you. One I want you to pay attention to is this one, fetal death. So it can be a very serious side effect, but also it's relevant to what we're going to be studying soon. I mean, right now. So let's look at this case control study. What it will be dealing with is preeclampsia. So let me define a little bit for you what preeclampsia is. It's something that happens, first of all, not too often. It's only 5% of all pregnancies. And what it is something that happens late in the pregnancy. It's something that is very, very dangerous. And in fact, the only way of saving the mother's life is to deliver the baby immediately, typically with a C-section. Okay, so it's not a good thing to have. Now, here is a study. It was called Urinary Cotinine Concentration Confirms the Reduced Risk. Now, this is the odd thing about it. The reduced risk of preeclampsia with tobacco exposure. So it's a rather odd conclusion, namely that there's something beneficial that one can attribute to smoking during pregnancy. Now remember the cotinine concentration. Cotinine was the metabolite for nicotine, and so mothers with high cotinine in their blood, presumably, in the urine, presumably can be identified as being smokers. But let's take a look at the result of the study. They did a case control study, and here it is. They took 50 women with preeclampsia. Now, here it was determined at more than 35 weeks of gestational age. And they matched those 50 women with 50 controls. And they matched them on gestational age, on date, and BMI, a body mass index. And they assayed the urine for cotinine. So they didn't ask the mothers whether they were smokers or not. They just assayed the cotinine they just assayed the urine for the cotinine to determine the classification in the study. And what they found was rather odd. They found that there were 35 patients. Of the 100, there were 35 with cotinine in their urine. But how they split up is very, very interesting. 11 of the women with preeclampsia, so 11 of these 50 had high cotinine, whereas 24 of these 50 in the control had high cotinine. So just looking at this, you'd say, wait a minute, there are many more smokers amongst the control group. In fact, twice as many, more than twice as many. There are many more smokers in the control group than in the group that had preeclampsia. So it looks like, indeed, the title is correct. Now, let's see if this could be just attributed to chance or what. What we can do, here's the odds of smoking for the toxemic women is 11 out of the 39. And the odds of smoking for the control women is 24 over 26. So the odds ratio is 3.27. So this is a tripling of the odds for the toxemic women. It's a tripling of the odds. Now, be very careful when looking at a case control study like this over time. One of the most important problems you can have is what is called the Neyman fallacy. It's also called the prevalence incidence bias. It's very much like the healthy worker effect. See, they came in at 35 weeks of gestation in this pregnancy to compare the smokers to non-smokers. But what about what happened in the first 34 weeks of gestation? Could that be relevant? And this is why I said to you, when looking at this, remember I said fetal deaths. So if you took 50 women at the beginning of the study, at the beginning of their pregnancy, and took 50 other women, smokers versus non-smokers, do you think after 35 weeks you would have 50 and 50? And the answer is no. So what happens here, and what you have to be worried about with the Neyman fallacy, is that you are looking at incidences. You're looking at something that happens after 35 weeks. These two groups are not comparable, assuming that smoking impacts whether one is allowed into this group at 35 weeks or not. So that's the question to ask yourself. So whether this 3.27 is significant or not, we can't attribute that to smoking. This is a nonsense study.